The insurance denial letter, a flimsy piece of paper holding the weight of a death sentence, crumpled in my trembling hands. Dr. Webb's voice, smooth and devoid of any genuine empathy, echoed in the sterile confines of the hospital room, a room that had become my world. Experimental treatments aren't covered, Dr. Chen. You have 18 hours before we discharge you. His use of doctor felt like a deliberate twist of the knife. He knew my background, my work. Hospital policy is quite clear on these matters. 18 hours? I managed, my voice a dry rasp. Dr. Webb, you can't be serious. This treatment, it's my only chance. You know the data. He adjusted his perfectly knotted tie, a small, dismissive gesture. I am perfectly serious, Dr. Chen. As I stated, experimental, therefore not covered. The hospital requires the bed. We've done all we can for you under the approved guidelines. My gaze flickered to the pristine, uncaring white walls. Approved by whom? I whispered, the question sharp with a dawning, bitter understanding. The people who stand to profit when I can no longer fight for an alternative? Webb's smile didn't reach his eyes. That's an inappropriate and, frankly, emotional accusation. The decision from United Health Front is final. A hospital administrator will be by later this afternoon with the discharge papers and to discuss any outstanding financial obligations. He turned, his polished shoes clicking softly on the linoleum, a sound that seemed to count down the seconds of my remaining life. The harsh fluorescent light overhead hummed, a relentless, indifferent sound that burned my dilated pupils. Each breath I took was shallow, tasting of the metallic tang of fear and the antiseptic cleaner they used on the floors. 18 hours. He might as well have signed my death certificate with a gold-plated pen. Final, I murmured to the empty room, the word tasting like ash. He calls this final. Easy for him to say. He's not the one with a ticking clock wired to his heart, each beat a reminder of borrowed time. The chill in the room wasn't just the overzealous air conditioning, it was the ice forming in my veins, a cold dread seeping into my bones. God, these lights are blinding. Or maybe it's just the rage starting to build. A sudden, volcanic rage flooded my chest, hot and acidic, chasing away the cold numbness. They weren't just denying me care. They were condemning me to die, and all for the sake of profit. Profit? I spat the word into the silence, the sound ugly and raw. That's the word he recoiled from. Of course. My mind raced, piecing together the callous indifference, the corporate euphemisms. They're not doctors, not anymore. They're businessmen, vultures in white coats, picking over a carcass that isn't even cold yet. Mine. My life, my research, the years I poured into understanding this very disease, all to be casually dismissed by a bottom line on a spreadsheet. How dare he? That man, Marcus Webb, with his pristine coat and practiced hollow sympathy. He wouldn't know genuine compassion if it bit him on his Armani-clad backside. Then, like a flare illuminating a darkened battlefield, an idea sparked. Tomorrow night, the annual Pharmax Innovators Gala, the grand event where the industry's titans celebrated their latest miracles. And who was the keynote speaker set to unveil a revolutionary new cancer drug? None other than Marcus Webb, his breakthrough, his triumph. The irony was a bitter pill, but the opportunity it presented was a jolt of adrenaline. His breakthrough drug, I muttered, a grim smile touching my lips. Tomorrow night, he'll be preening, basking in the glow of stolen glory, accepting accolades for his genius. A surge of defiant energy coursed through me. That gala, it's not just his stage, it's mine. My deadline. My last stand. 18 hours, Webb? Let's see what I can do in 18 hours. My fingers, still trembling but now with purpose, slipped into the pocket of the worn robe hanging on the back of the door. They closed around the cool, familiar shape of the flash drive. My life's work. Our life's work, Jake. All of it, right here. Years of late nights, failed experiments, and finally, the breakthrough they were now calling their own. He thinks he can steal it, repackage it, parade it as his own discovery, and then deny me the very thing that could save me, the very thing I created? Oh, this isn't just about my life anymore, I whispered, my voice hardening. This is about every patient he'll condemn with his greed, every life that will be cut short because the cure is less profitable than the disease. I slid the flash drive deeper, a small, hard knot of resolve in my palm. The stolen research data. It would either save me or it would be the spark that burned their corrupt empire to the ground. If these were my last hours, they wouldn't be spent fading away. They'd be spent fighting. The flash drive felt like a talisman in my robe pocket, a conduit for the cold fury that had now sharpened into a singular, unwavering purpose. 18 hours. The clock was ticking, not just on my life, but on Marcus Webb's charade. I reached for the bedside phone, its plastic cool beneath my determined grip. No more pleading. No more appeals to a system designed to crush, not to cure. It was time to stop playing their game and start writing my own rules. My fingers punched in the hospital's main line, then navigated the automated menu with a precision born of desperation. "Billing department," I stated when a bored-sounding operator finally answered. My voice was calm, almost unnervingly so. "I need to speak to your insurance liaison regarding a critical and time-sensitive coverage error." "Now." The operator, clearly unimpressed, began her spiel. "Do you have a patient account number or a reference number for your inquiry, ma'am?" She droned, the monotony of her tone grating against my frayed nerves. I cut her off, the politeness I no longer had time for stripped from my voice. "This is Dr. Sarah Chen, room 412, and this isn't an inquiry. It's a notification of gross negligence directly impacting patient survival. Put me through to someone who can actually make a decision, not just follow a flowchart. My medical credentials should grant me that much, shouldn't they?" A surprised silence crackled on the line for a moment. "One moment, Dr. Chen," the operator said, a hint of newfound urgency in her voice. "I'll see if Miss Periwinkle, our senior liaison, is available." While on hold, the tinny music did little to soothe me. "Miss Periwinkle?" I muttered to the beige wall, a humorless smile playing on my lips. Sounds like a character from a badly written children's story, not someone who holds the power to reverse a death sentence. The click on the line announced her arrival. "Dr. Chen, this is Agnes Periwinkle," a reedy, slightly flustered voice announced. The operator said something about an urgent matter. I could almost picture her, mid-50s, spectacles perched on her nose, a lifetime spent navigating the labyrinthine corridors of healthcare bureaucracy. "Miss Periwinkle," I began, keeping my tone level but unyielding. "I'm looking at a denial of coverage from United Health Front for an experimental treatment protocol. A treatment protocol, I might add, that represents my only viable chance of survival." She rustled some papers. Yes, Dr. Chen. I have your file here. Case number UF 4077B. As United Health Front has previously communicated and as Dr. Webb's office has been notified, your appeal regarding the experimental CAR T cell therapy was, unfortunately, denied. The case is now considered closed. There's really nothing further I can... I let her voice trail off, then leaned into the receiver as if I were physically present in her cramped office. "Miss Periwinkle," I said, my voice dropping to a steely whisper, each word carefully enunciated. "Let me be exceedingly clear. If that case remains closed and I am discharged from this hospital in approximately 17 hours and 32 minutes, as per Dr. Marcus Webb's direct instruction, I will make it my final dying mission to ensure that every news outlet, every medical ethics board, and every single influential person who will lend an ear knows exactly how United Health Front and this hospital actively, knowingly, participated in the death of a fellow physician. How does murder by bureaucracy, the Pharmax scandal, sound as a headline to you, Miss Periwinkle? Or perhaps something more direct. Local doctor left to die by profit-driven hospital. A sharp intake of breath on the other end. Oh my goodness, she stammered, the fluster escalating into palpable alarm. Doctor, please, there's absolutely no need for such inflammatory language. I am simply following established procedure. I could hear the panic in her voice, the sudden fear of a career bureaucrat facing a situation far outside her scripted responses. Then get me someone whose job it is to change the damned procedure, Miss Periwinkle. I snapped, the ice in my voice cracking to reveal the fire beneath. Your manager, now. or I start making calls to journalists whose numbers I happen to have memorized. There was a frantic scrabbling sound, then a muffled conversation. After what felt like an eternity, a new voice came on the line. Male, deeper, and attempting an air of weary authority. Dr. Chen, this is Arthur Henderson, the billing operations manager. Miss Periwinkle is understandably quite distressed by your accusations. What exactly is this about threats and media involvement? I took a slow breath, recalibrating. Mr. Henderson, I began, my voice returning to that unnervingly calm register. It's about my life. A life which your department, in collusion with United Health Front, seems to value at considerably less than a rounding error in your quarterly profits. My appeal for coverage for a life-saving treatment has been denied. I want to know precisely why, and I want that decision reversed before I am forcibly discharged to die. Henderson sighed, a sound heavy with practiced obfuscation. Dr. Chen, these decisions, as I'm sure a medical professional like yourself understands, are complex. They are made at a very high level based on rigorously established coverage criteria and actuarial tables. Experimental treatments, particularly those with high upfront costs, are rarely— Spare me the corporate platitudes, Henderson, I interrupted, my patience evaporating. I helped write some of the established cancer treatment protocols your hospital probably still bills for at exorbitant rates. My current condition is terminal without this specific experimental treatment. I know the data, I know the risks, and I know its potential. Someone made a specific call to flag my case as not worth the expense. I want a name. There was a pause, a hesitation that spoke volumes. Henderson cleared his throat. Look, doctor, this is highly irregular, strictly off the record, you understand? His voice dropped conspiratorially. Your case. It wasn't just denied through the normal automated review channels or standard committee assessment. It was flagged. Personally. My heart began to hammer against my ribs. Flagged? I pressed, my voice dangerously quiet. By whom, Mr. Henderson? Another moment of silence, then. The directive to designate your case as non-essential expenditure due to low statistical probability of success, despite exceptionally high cost, and to recommend immediate, unequivocal declination to United Health Front came directly from Dr. Marcus Webb. He cited prudent resource stewardship and optimization of benevolent fund allocation. Resource stewardship. The euphemism was so vile, so utterly devoid of humanity, it almost took my breath away. Webb. Not some faceless committee, not an algorithm, but Marcus Webb himself had personally signed my death warrant, all while preparing to launch a drug born from research I suspected was mine. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. The rage was a living entity inside me now, a cold, coiled serpent. I see, I said, my voice betraying none of the storm within. Thank you, Mr. Henderson. You've been extraordinarily illuminating. I ended the call before he could utter another word, the receiver clattering back into its cradle. My mind was a whirlwind. Webb hadn't just been indifferent. He'd been actively malevolent, ensuring my silence by ensuring my demise. As if summoned by the dark turn of my thoughts, a light knock came at my door. A young man in a crisp messenger uniform stood there, holding an oversized, opulent-looking envelope. Package for Dr. Sarah Chen, he said, his smile bright and oblivious. That's me, I replied, my voice still hollow from the conversation with Henderson. I took the envelope. The cardstock was thick, expensive, embossed with the Pharmax corporate logo and the insignia of the Innovator's Gala. Inside, nestled on a bed of faux velvet, was a heavy invitation, its calligraphy elegant and mocking. Dr. Marcus Webb requests the honor of your presence. Have a good day, ma'am, the messenger chirped, already turning away. I stared at the invitation, a mirthless laugh bubbling in my throat. Oh, I intend to, I whispered to the closing door. It's going to be a night to remember, Marcus, for both of us. My eyes fell to the digital clock on the bedside table. 16 hours and 47 minutes. The countdown wasn't just on my life. It was on his empire. The gala wasn't just a deadline. It was the stage for his downfall, and I had the starring role. The conversation with Henderson had lit a bonfire under my resolve. Webb hadn't just passively allowed my denial, he'd orchestrated it. Resource stewardship, he'd called it. I called it murder. With less than 16 hours until the gala, every second was precious. My first stop, Pharmax headquarters, a gleaming monolith of steel and glass that scraped the city skyline, a monument to corporate ambition. Getting in was easier than I'd anticipated. My old employee ID, surprisingly still active for low-level access, got me through the initial turnstiles before security could scrutinize the fact I was supposed to be on medical leave, likely dying. I'd dressed the part. A severe gray suit I hadn't worn in years, hair pulled back, a pair of non-prescription glasses. I looked like any other harried mid-level drone, invisible. I found an unoccupied alcove in the expansive, marble-floored main lobby, near enough to the executive wing elevators to observe but anonymous enough to go unnoticed, or so I hoped. My laptop, loaded with software Jake had helped me develop for situations precisely like this, hummed quietly on my lap. Accessing Pharmax's internal security camera network had been a nostalgic exercise, their firewalls surprisingly lax for a billion-dollar corporation. A few keystrokes, and a window popped up. A live feed from outside Marcus Webb's opulent corner office suite. Another window soon streamed the audio from a discreetly hacked microphone in his private conference room, a device likely overlooked by his high-paid security sweeps. Through the grainy camera feed, I watched as two older men in expensive suits, pharmaceutical executives by their predatory smiles and glossy brochures, were being shown out of Webb's office by Webb himself. He was all charm and feigned deference. The audio feed from the conference room had picked up the tail end of their discussion before they moved into his office. Absolutely essential to control the narrative on pricing for Omnia 7, Marcus, one of the exiting executives was saying, his voice a low rumble. Any hint that a more cost-effective alternative could be developed from similar base compounds, and our shareholder confidence will plummet. Webb clapped him on the shoulder. Rest assured, gentlemen, Pharmax is committed to maximizing Omnia 7's market exclusivity. We have robust strategies in place to address any potential dilutions of its value proposition. My stomach churned. Omnia 7. That had to be their name for the drug. My drug. And dilutions of its value proposition was a sickeningly sterile way of saying cheaper versions that could save more lives. As they disappeared towards the elevator bank, I saw another figure approach Webb's open door. Dr. Victoria Kane, Pharmax's head of clinical development, her expression severe. This was the meeting I was waiting for. Just as Kane stepped into Webb's office and the door clicked shut, a flicker of movement at the edge of my peripheral vision sent a jolt of ice through my veins. A sharply dressed woman with a headset, Webb's executive assistant, I vaguely recalled her from my time here, a gatekeeper named Cynthia if memory served, was walking briskly through the lobby. Her eyes scanned the area, then locked onto me. A flicker of confusion, then dawning recognition. Oh no, I saw her lips move, speaking quietly into her headset. Security, this is Cynthia Vance from Mr. Webb's office. There's a former employee, Sarah Chen, in the West Lobby. She appears distressed. Could you send someone to escort her out? She doesn't have an appointment. My heart hammered. They knew, or at least they knew I was here. I fought the urge to bolt. Running would only confirm their suspicions. Instead, I hunched further over my laptop, fingers flying, ensuring the audio recording from Webb's conference room was secure and streaming to my encrypted cloud storage. Too late, Cynthia, I muttered under my breath. My gaze fixed on the audio waveforms spiking on my screen as Kane and Webb began to speak. The show's already started. Marcus, we need to talk about the Chen case. Dr. Kane's voice came through my headphones, crisp and urgent, as soon as she was inside his private conference room. The video feed from outside his office was now useless, but the audio was crystal clear. Her stunt with the billing department this morning was alarming. She's not just going to fade quietly. Webb chuckled, a sound devoid of humor. Sarah Chen is a non-issue, Victoria. A dying woman clutching at straws. United Health Front has been counseled appropriately. Her discharge is proceeding. By tomorrow, she'll be a sad footnote. A footnote who developed the foundational research for Omnia 7? Kane countered, her voice tight. A footnote who knows exactly what corners we cut to expedite the Phase 3 trials after she became too ill to oversee them? She's not stupid, Marcus, and she's certainly not quiet. There was a pause, the clink of ice in a glass. The generic viability reports for CTX 802, the original compound, Webb said, his voice smooth as silk, deadly as a viper. I reviewed them again this morning. If another company, or worse, an academic consortium, were to pursue that line using her publicly available foundational papers, the generic version would cost pennies on the dollar compared to Omnia 7. Pennies, Victoria. And save tens of thousands more lives, Kane retorted, a surprising edge of defiance in her tone. But it would obliterate our projected 10-year revenue stream for Omnia 7, Webb stated flatly. We have a fiduciary duty to our shareholders, Victoria. A duty to protect our 9-figure investment in bringing Omnia 7 to market under the Pharmax banner. He sighed dramatically. It's unfortunate, of course, but if a few less fortunate individuals can't access the branded version immediately, well, that's a regrettable consequence of a market-driven healthcare system. We need to protect our investment, even if it means letting some patients die who might have been saved by a less profitable iteration. My breath hitched. He'd said it. He'd actually said it. Letting some patients die. The words, cold and calculated, hung in the air, transmitted directly into my ears, and now safely onto my recording. This was it. This was the confession. You're playing with fire, Marcus, Kane warned, her voice now hushed, laced with fear. If this ever got out, if she has any proof of what you did to sideline her research and then deny her access to the refined compound? Webb cut her off with a dismissive wave of his hand, audible even over the audio feed. It won't get out, Victoria. I have made absolutely certain of that. The paper trail for CTX 802's instability issues and unfavorable side effect profile is impeccable, all leading to its justifiable abandonment in favor of the vastly superior Omnia 7. Sarah Chen is ill, desperate, and by tomorrow evening, effectively silenced. Who would believe a dying, discredited researcher over the celebrated humanitarian unveiling a miracle drug? His arrogance was astounding, almost a caricature, but utterly terrifying in its conviction. Besides, he added, a chilling finality in his tone, her window of opportunity to make any credible noise is closing rapidly. Less than a day now. The cold marble floor of the lobby suddenly felt like it was miles beneath my feet. My own footsteps seemed to echo unnaturally loud in my ears as I quickly, but without running, packed my laptop and slipped out of the alcove. They confessed, not just to suppressing cheaper alternatives, but to a deliberate strategy that involved letting patients die to protect their profits, and a conspiracy to bury my original research and discredit me. Webb's casual admission, his utter certainty that he was untouchable, was seared into my brain. Security would be looking for me any second. I clutched the bag containing my laptop, the recording now a ticking bomb. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my ribs, a mixture of terror, triumph, and an overwhelming urgency. I had him. I had them both. Now I just had to live long enough to use it. The Gala. It was all leading to the Gala. The stale air of the anonymous downtown coffee shop did little to calm the frantic thrumming in my chest. My escape from Pharmax headquarters had been pure adrenaline, a blur of weaving through indifferent lunch-hour crowds, constantly checking over my shoulder, expecting the heavy hand of corporate security at any moment. But I'd made it. For now. My laptop was open on the small, wobbly table, the precious audio file of Webb and Kane's conversation already triple backed up to encrypted drives and secure cloud servers Jake had set up for contingencies like this. Contingencies, I thought with a grimace. We'd always talked about what-ifs regarding my research, but never in my wildest nightmares did I imagine this scenario. Me, a fugitive with a death sentence, holding the evidence that could dismantle a pharmaceutical giant, run by the man who was actively trying to ensure I died before his grand unveiling. Okay, Sarah, think, I whispered to myself, cupping the lukewarm coffee mug for a warmth that didn't quite reach me. They know you were in the lobby. Cynthia saw you. Webb knows you confronted billing. What's their next move? They'd be scrambling, trying to assess the damage, trying to figure out what I knew, what I could prove. Would they connect the dots? That the problem patient was also the brilliant researcher whose work they'd quietly absorbed? It was time to see. With trembling fingers, I initiated another program Jake had built, a discreet backdoor into Pharmax's internal communications logs focusing on Kane and Webb. It was a long shot, a digital fishing expedition. But if they were panicking, they might get careless. The minutes stretched, filled only with the clatter of crockery and the low murmur of other patrons. Then, a new audio file began to download from a flagged, encrypted call between Kane's direct line and Webb's private mobile. My breath caught. I slipped on my earbuds. Victoria Kane's voice was tight with barely suppressed hysteria. Marcus, it's far worse than we imagined. That woman in the lobby this morning, the Sarah Chen you flagged with United Health Front for expedited discharge. It's Dr. Sarah Chen from the original CTX 802 project. Our Omnia 7 is built directly on her foundational framework. There was a rustle of papers. I just pulled her old Pharmax personnel file. It matches the hospital admission data. She's not just some random disgruntled patient, Marcus. She's the goddamn originator. She's the one whose intellectual property we adapted. The euphemism was pathetic, even in her panic. And get this, Kane continued, her voice cracking. Her hospital medical records, the detailed ones, were accessed from an internal Pharmax IP address this morning, right around the time she raised hell with Henderson in billing. That must have been her, digging into her own denial. She knows, Marcus. She knows we denied her access to what is essentially her own cure, and I'm willing to bet she knows why. Webb's reply was a low snarl, distorted slightly by the connection. Calm yourself, Victoria. Panicking helps no one. So, she's the original researcher. It complicates matters, perhaps, but it doesn't change the fundamental trajectory. Her credibility is shot. She's terminally ill. Terminally ill and incredibly motivated, Kane almost shrieked. And what if she recorded you? What if she recorded us in the conference room? She was in the building, Marcus. What if that stunt in the lobby was a diversion? She didn't record anything, Webb said, though a new thread of unease had crept into his voice. The room is swept daily for bugs. She was in the lobby. She's desperate. She has no proof, just the ramblings of a dying woman. And if you're wrong, Kane pressed, if she has even a shred of evidence, this gala tomorrow night, it could become a disaster. Our stock, our reputations. Your Man of the Year award. It will proceed as planned, Webb stated, his voice regaining its cold authority, though the underlying tremor was still there if you listened closely. Increase security at the gala, triple it. Ensure she's not on any guest list, that her face is circulated to every guard, and watch her. Find out where she is. If she makes one wrong move, one public utterance, we'll have her committed as a psychiatric case. A tragic breakdown exacerbated by her illness. Understood? Understood, Kane breathed, though she sounded anything but convinced. The call ended. I leaned back, a slow, cold smile spreading across my face. The hunter was now the hunted, but the prey was biting back. They knew. They finally, truly understood who I was and the magnitude of the threat I posed. The reversal wasn't just mine, it was theirs too. Their certainty was shattered. Their panic was a sweet, sharp counterpoint to the dread that had been my constant companion. Webb's arrogance was still there, but it was brittle now, easily shattered. He thinks he can silence me, commit me. Oh, Marcus, I murmured, closing my laptop. You have no idea what I'm capable of when I have nothing left to lose. The gala, tomorrow night. It wasn't just a possibility anymore, it was a certainty. I would be there and I wouldn't be silent. Tomorrow night, I declared to the indifferent bustle of the coffee shop, my voice a low, determined hum that was for my ears only. Tomorrow night, Dr. Sarah Chen, the discredited, dying researcher, is going to take center stage at your glittering little party, Marcus. The plan began to form, crystallizing from the fog of rage and desperation into a sharp, focused strategy. I will stand on that gala stage in front of your investors, your colleagues, the media you've so carefully cultivated, and I will tell them the truth. My mind raced, visualizing the scene. The opulent ballroom, the expectant faces, Webb preening in the spotlight, and then me. I'll tell them how Omnia 7, your breakthrough drug, your ticket to fame and fortune, is built on research you stole. My research, stolen from me when I was too sick, too vulnerable, too trusting to fight back. The injustice of it still burned a fresh wave of anger. You didn't just steal my work, you monsters. I seethed internally. You tried to steal my life, then my legacy. You left me to die, denied me the very medicine that sprang from my own mind, all to protect your profit margins. The memory of Webb's voice saying, letting some patients die, echoed, fueling the fire. No more. Tomorrow, the world will know what Pharmax truly stands for. How would I get on stage? That was a detail to be worked out. Perhaps Jake could help with logistics, a distraction, a hacked microphone. Or perhaps I'd just walk up there. What could they do? Shoot me? The thought was almost liberating. A profound shift settled over me, a strange and empowering calm replacing the frantic energy. Instead of hiding, instead of cowering in the shadows waiting for the inevitable, I would embrace the confrontation. If these were indeed my last days, they would be spent not in quiet resignation, but in a blaze of glorious defiance. If I'm dying anyway, I whispered, the realization a sudden sharp clarity, then I'm taking your empire down with me, Marcus Webb. And you too, Victoria Kane, for your complicity. It wasn't just about revenge anymore, though the thought of wiping the smug superiority off Webb's face was undeniably appealing. It was about justice. For me, yes, but also for every patient who had been or would be sacrificed on the altar of corporate greed. For every researcher whose work had been exploited. For every voice silenced by power and money. You think you've made sure it won't get out? I recalled Webb's arrogant boast to Kane. You haven't accounted for one thing, Marcus. A scientist with a terminal diagnosis, a stolen legacy, and absolutely nothing left to fear from you. My research, the years of painstaking work, the intellectual property that was as much a part of me as my own DNA, was now their shining product. Omnia 7, a name designed to inspire hope, to promise miracles. But I knew its genesis, its true name. CTX 802, born from my labor, nurtured by my intellect, and then snatched away. You will not profit from my pain, I vowed, the words a silent oath. You will not build your kingdom on my grave. The coffee had gone cold. I stood up, a newfound strength in my limbs. The fear hadn't vanished entirely, but it was now a companion, not a master. It was the electric hum beneath the surface, a reminder of the stakes, but overshadowed by a towering, unshakable resolve. The gala wasn't just a deadline. It was a destiny. My final act. And I would make damn sure it was a performance they and the world would never forget. The countdown continues, gentlemen, I thought, a warrior queen girding for her final battle. But the clock is ticking for you now, too. The sterile corridors of the State Medical Board building hummed with a quiet authority that usually intimidated petitioners into silence. Not today. Today, I was a storm about to break. Jake had flagged the emergency board meeting an hour ago, convened, ironically, to discuss upholding ethical standards in pharmaceutical innovation, likely a preemptive PR move by someone on Webb's payroll. The irony was a bitter aperitif. In my hand, I clutched a thick sheaf of papers, meticulously transcribed copies of Webb and Kane's damning conversation, each word a nail for their coffins. My heart hammered against my ribs, not with fear, but with a furious, righteous energy. This was it. No more hiding in the shadows, no more whispered accusations. This was a declaration of war played out in the very halls of the establishment that had enabled men like Webb for far too long. I didn't knock. I threw the heavy oak door of the conference room open with such force that it slammed against the mahogany paneling, the sound cracking like a gunshot in the suddenly silent room. 20 pairs of startled eyes belonging to the esteemed members of the State Medical Board swiveled towards me. At the head of the long, polished table sat Chairman Everton Hayes, his gavel frozen midair. And there to Hayes' right, looking every bit the distinguished physician about to be lauded, was Marcus Webb himself, his face a mask of surprised irritation that quickly morphed into dawning horror as he recognized me. "Order! What is the meaning of this intrusion?" Hayes finally boomed, his jowls quivering. "This is a private meeting, madam. Who in God's name are you?" Another board member, a portly man with a flushed face, sputtered, "Security! Someone call security immediately." I raised my hand, a gesture that surprisingly cut through their burgeoning panic. "My name is Dr. Sarah Chen," I announced, my voice clear and carrying, resonating with a strength I hadn't known I possessed. "And I have information absolutely vital to the integrity of this board and, more importantly, to the safety of every patient whose life you ostensibly claim to protect." I strode towards the table, the click of my sensible heels the only sound, and with a deliberate, almost theatrical flourish, I slammed the stack of transcripts down in front of Chairman Hayes. The papers fanned out, a stark white accusation against the dark wood. "Gentlemen," I began, my gaze sweeping across their stunned, indignant faces, lingering for a moment on Webb's rapidly paling complexion. "And I use that term with considerable reservation for some of you present, please. Save your breath summoning security. They can't unhear what I'm about to say, nor can they unsee what I am about to show you." I gestured dramatically to the scattered papers. "Within these documents, you will find carefully transcribed proof, direct from the horse's mouth, so to speak, of how your most celebrated physician, your golden boy, the soon-to-be lauded humanitarian Dr. Marcus Webb," I spat his name like a curse, "plans to systematically profit from what can only be accurately described as impending, deliberate, corporate-sponsored genocide, and how he has already taken active, malicious steps to ensure its success, starting with attempting to ensure my own premature demise." A collective gasp went around the room. Several board members half rose from their seats. Webb was now ashen, his eyes darting between me and Hayes, a cornered animal. Chairman Hayes, to his credit, regained a semblance of composure, though his hand trembled slightly as he picked up the topmost sheet. He began to read, his brow furrowing deeper with every line. "Dr. Chen," he said, his voice gravelly, attempting to project authority over the rising murmur of disbelief and outrage, "that is an outrageous and, frankly, a dangerously slanderous accusation. Genocide, these are extraordinarily serious allegations you're leveling against a highly distinguished member of our medical profession." His eyes flicked down the page again, then back to me, a flicker of something doubt, dawning comprehension. In their depths. "This transcript? This purports to be a direct recording of Dr. Webb in private conversation?" "They're not mere allegations, Chairman Hayes." I cut him off, my voice ringing with conviction. "They are direct quotes. They are documented facts. They are his own words, his very own confessions, meticulously detailing a criminal conspiracy to suppress life-saving, affordable alternatives to his vastly overpriced new drug, Omnia 7. He explicitly states his intent to let patients die to protect his 9-figure investment." I leaned forward, my hands planted on the table. "He talks about my original research compound, CTX 802, costing pennies on the dollar and needing to protect our investment, even if it meant fewer lives saved. Is that distinguished enough for you, Chairman?" Hayes swallowed hard. "This board requires far more than uncorroborated transcripts of alleged conversations. We would require verifiable, irrefutable proof." "Oh, the audio recordings are pristine, Chairman," I assured him, a predatory smile touching my lips. "Crystal clear, and I possess all the necessary metadata, encrypted and time-stamped, along with further corroborating evidence that I am prepared to submit. But first, I implore you and every member of this board to read his words. Read them carefully. See the man you champion for the monster he truly is." Suddenly, Webb shot to his feet, his chair scraping harshly against the floor. His face was a grotesque mask of apoplectic fury, veins bulging in his temples. "This is an absolute outrage, a preposterous fabrication," he thundered, his voice hoarse with rage. "This woman is clearly unwell, delusional, and has a vendetta. She's been harassing my staff, making these wild, unsubstantiated accusations for days." Chairman, she is a disruptive influence and should be forcibly removed immediately. He then turned his venomous gaze directly on me, his lip curling into a snarl. You have absolutely no idea what you're dealing with, Chen. You are playing a dangerous game you cannot possibly win. You are finished. For a moment, the sheer force of his hatred was like a physical blow. But then, I remembered the cool certainty of the recording, the weight of the truth on my side. I offered him a calm, almost pitying smile. Oh, Marcus, I said, my voice dropping, but carrying with deadly precision in the stunned silence that followed his outburst. That's where you're so profoundly mistaken. I know exactly what I'm dealing with. I let my gaze travel around the room, meeting the eyes of each board member. I'm dealing with corporate fraud on an unimaginable international scale. I'm dealing with a meticulously planned conspiracy to commit what amounts to mass murder for profit, orchestrated by that man. I pointed directly at Webb. And on a more personal, more intimate note, my voice softened yet intensified, drawing every person in the room into my orbit. I'm dealing with the very man who systematically stole my life's work, my own patented research for the compound CTX 802 callously, repackaged it as his miracle drug, Omnia 7, and then, with a cruelty that still beggars belief, personally arranged for me, its original inventor, to be denied access to it through my insurance, effectively leaving me to die. That, gentlemen, is what I'm dealing with. And that is what you are condoning if you choose to look away. The silence in the room was absolute, thick enough to suffocate. Webb looked as though I'd struck him physically. The color drained from his face, replaced by a waxy, horrified pallor. Chairman Hayes stared at me, then at Webb, then at the papers before him, his expression unreadable but deeply troubled. The other board members were a tableau of shock, disbelief, and dawning anger. As I turned to leave them to the cacophony I knew would erupt, my phone buzzed silently in my pocket with a priority alert from Jake. Another intercepted audio snippet from a frantic, ongoing call between Victoria Kane and Marcus Webb's secure line. I pressed the discreet earbud in as I walked towards the door. Kane's voice, thin and terrified, was a panicked squeak. Marcus, she was at the state medical board meeting. She confronted everyone. She played them a recording, showed them transcripts. They're talking about an emergency injunction, Marcus. A possible immediate suspension of the Omnia 7 launch. The Gala! Marcus, the Gala starts in 6 hours. What in God's name do we do? They know she's the original researcher now. Everyone is hearing it. This is an unmitigated catastrophe. I paused at the doorway, a grim, triumphant smile touching my lips. Catastrophe, Victoria? I thought, the chaos erupting behind me in the conference room a symphony to my ears. No, my dear, this is merely the overture. The main performance, the one that will bring down your entire corrupt house of cards, is still to come. 6 hours. Let the games truly finally begin. The Pharmax Innovators Gala was everything I'd expected. A grotesque monument to obscene wealth and self-congratulation. The crystal ballroom of the city's most expensive hotel glittered obnoxiously. Chandeliers like frozen diamond waterfalls dripped from the impossibly high ceiling, and the air thrummed with the smug chatter of pharmaceutical executives, investors, and the politicians they owned. Champagne flowed as freely as the lies they peddled. Marcus Webb was scheduled to give his keynote, the unveiling of Omnia 7, at precisely 9 p.m. It was 8:58. Jake had done his work flawlessly. A glitch in the AV system, a minor delay announced by a flustered technician, Jake, in a surprisingly convincing disguise, had created a momentary lull, a vacuum of attention just as the previous speaker, some puffed-up marketing VP, exited the stage. This was my cue. Dressed in a simple dark dress that seemed to absorb the ballroom's excessive light, I walked with a steady, unhurried pace from a side entrance, not towards a seat, but directly towards the illuminated, empty stage. A ripple of confusion, then annoyance, went through the glittering assembly. Who was this gaunt, unannounced woman daring to interrupt their revelry? I felt hundreds of eyes on me, questioning, dismissive. I reached the podium. The lone microphone stood waiting. As I stepped into the warmth of the spotlight, I scanned the sea of faces until I found him. Marcus Webb, seated at the head table, a king surveying his domain. his hand halfway to raising a champagne flute for a toast. Our eyes met. The flute clattered from his suddenly nerveless fingers, shattering on the polished floor, the sound unnaturally loud in the abrupt, shocked silence that had fallen over the entire crystal ballroom. His face, moments before flushed with triumph, drained of all color, leaving behind a waxy, horrified sheen under the harsh glare of the spotlight. He knew. In that instant, he knew his perfectly orchestrated evening was about to implode. The silence stretched, taut and electric. I could hear my own heartbeat, a steady drum against the panic that tried and failed to take root. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice, amplified by the microphone, cutting through the stunned hush. It was weaker than I would have liked, bearing the telltale rasp of my illness, but it was clear, unwavering, and filled with a chilling certainty that commanded attention. Esteemed guests, titans of industry, arbiters of health and innovation. My gaze swept the room, making brief, pointed contact with some of the key investors and board members I'd seen in my research. You are here tonight to celebrate a breakthrough, a new miracle drug called Omnia 7, brought to you by the visionary leadership of Dr. Marcus Webb and Pharmax. A smattering of confused, hesitant applause started, then died abruptly as I raised a hand. But I am here tonight to tell you the truth about this miracle. I paused, letting the anticipation build, feeling the weight of every stare. Tonight's breakthrough drug, the foundation upon which Omnia 7 is built, was stolen. Stolen from a dying colleague, a fellow researcher who dedicated her life to its discovery. I let that sink in, then delivered the killing blow, my eyes locked again on Webb's horrified face. Stolen from me! A collective gasp, a wave of murmurs and whispers rippled through the ballroom. Webb was on his feet now, his face contorted in a mask of fury and desperation. He lunged towards a secondary microphone on the dais, shoving aside a startled event coordinator. "This is preposterous!" he roared, his voice booming artificially loud, cracking with panic. "This woman is delusional. She's clearly unwell." He gestured wildly towards me. "She's facing terminal cancer, as many of you know from her unfortunate and public pleas for funding for unproven treatments. Her judgment is impaired. She's lashing out." He tried for a sympathetic, dismissive tone, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. "Security! Will someone please escort Dr. Chen off the stage? She needs help, not a platform for these tragic fantasies." "Oh, I'm facing terminal cancer. All right, Marcus," I fired back, my voice cutting through his tirade like a scalpel, sharp and precise. "A cancer you ensured would go untreated when you personally flagged my insurance appeal for denial. And you denied my access to the very treatment that could save me, my own treatment, because you needed to hide your theft, silence the one person who knew Omnia 7 was a lie built on my stolen research." The crowd was in an uproar now, people standing, shouting questions, a dozen different conversations erupting at once. The facade of polite society had shattered. Webb clutched the microphone, his knuckles white. "Dr. Chen has absolutely no proof of these wild, slanderous, and frankly insane accusations," he yelled, trying to project confidence over the growing chaos. "She has no evidence, nothing but the bitter ramblings of a failed researcher." He was playing to his allies in the room, the ones who had too much to lose if I was telling the truth. "Where is the supposed proof, Dr. Chen? Show us. Or will you admit this is all a desperate, pathetic cry for attention?" "Proof, Marcus," I interrupted, my voice suddenly calm, almost conversational, which seemed to unnerve him more than my anger. "You want proof?" A small, cold smile touched my lips. "You really shouldn't have asked." I gave the slightest nod, a prearranged signal to Jake, who I knew was patched into the ballroom's main AV control booth, ready for this exact moment. "I have your recorded confession." And then, silence. Not the shocked silence from before, but a new, anticipatory dread. From the massive ballroom speakers strategically placed all around the opulent room, a new sound emerged. Not music, not an announcement. A voice. Victoria Kane's voice, tight with panic from the recording I'd made just hours before. "Marcus, it's far worse than we imagined. That woman. It's Dr. Sarah Chen, from the original CTX 802 project. Our Omnia 7 is built directly on her foundational framework. The color, if it were possible, drained further from Webb's face. He looked wildly around, as if searching for a way to stop the sound, his eyes landing on Kane, who was half rising from her seat, her face a mask of pure terror. Then Webb's own voice, smooth and chillingly rational from the recording. The generic viability reports for CTX 802, the original compound. If another company were to pursue that line, the generic version would cost pennies on the dollar compared to Omnia 7. Pennies, Victoria. Kane let out a strangled cry and began to push her way through the stunned, now silent onlookers, desperately trying to reach the stage. "Stop it! Turn it off!" she shrieked, her carefully constructed composure shattering. But I was already moving. My eyes scanned the front rows, finding her. Amelia Hayes, the lead investigative journalist for the Global Herald, a woman renowned for her tenacity and her exposés on corporate corruption. I'd made sure Jake got her an invitation. As Kane clawed her way towards the steps of the stage, I strode to the edge, holding out the small, innocuous flash drive, the one that contained everything. "Miss Hayes!" I called out, my voice clear over the damning audio still playing. She looked up, her expression a mixture of shock and intense professional focus. "Dr. Chen, what is this?" she managed, already moving towards me. "It's the truth, Miss Hayes," I said, pressing the drive firmly into her outstretched hand, just as Victoria Kane, disheveled and frantic, finally stumbled onto the stage behind me. "All of it. The full recording, the research papers, the patent trail, the insurance denials. Make sure everyone hears it. Make sure everyone knows." Kane reached for me, her fingers like talons. "You bitch! You'll destroy us all!" she screamed, her voice raw. But it was too late. Amelia Hayes was already backing away, clutching the flash drive, her photographer snapping furiously. Uniformed security guards, finally galvanized into action, were now converging on the stage from all sides, their expressions grim. They were moving towards me, their intent clear. I didn't resist. I simply stood tall, a strange sense of peace settling over me. My part was done. And then, as the first guard laid a hand on my arm, Marcus Webb's voice, his recorded voice, boomed through the crystal ballroom, magnified, inescapable, each word a sledgehammer blow to his empire, his reputation, his entire existence. It's unfortunate, of course, but if a few less fortunate individuals can't access the branded version immediately, well, that's a regrettable consequence of a market-driven healthcare system. We need to protect our investment, even if it means letting some patients die who might have been saved by a less profitable iteration. A collective, horrified gasp swept the room, followed by a stunned, sickening silence. The only sounds were Kane's ragged sobs, the click of cameras, and the heavy footsteps of the guards leading me away into a future I couldn't predict, but knowing with absolute certainty that I had already won. The immediate aftermath of the gala was a maelstrom. My dramatic exit, escorted by security but already a folk hero in the eyes of a suddenly awakened public, was merely the opening salvo. Amelia Hayes and the Global Herald didn't just run with the story. They launched a full-scale journalistic assault. The flash drive was a treasure trove. Within hours, #Pharmaxgate was trending worldwide. Webb's carefully constructed empire, built on a foundation of lies and my stolen research, began to crumble with astonishing speed. In a stunning development that has rocked the pharmaceutical world, as a news anchor announced on a television, in the small private hospital room Jake had somehow secured for me, a room where, ironically, I was finally beginning treatment with CTX 802. The FDA has launched multiple criminal investigations into Pharmax and its executives. CEO Marcus Webb and Head of Clinical Development Dr. Victoria Kane were taken into federal custody earlier this morning, facing charges ranging from securities fraud to reckless endangerment and conspiracy. The image on screen was Webb, no longer in his bespoke suit, but in an ill-fitting orange jumpsuit, his face a ruin of disbelief and fury. Kane looked utterly broken. "It's not justice yet," I'd whispered to Jake, who sat vigil beside me, a rare smile gracing his usually worried face. "But it's a damn fine start." He'd simply squeezed my hand. Pharmax stock has plummeted over 80% in pre-market trading. Another report blared a day later. Calls for congressional hearings are growing louder. The company is effectively paralyzed. Crumble, I thought, watching the empire implode from my hospital bed, the life-giving drip of my own research flowing into my veins. Such a gentle, almost passive word for the societal demolition they so richly deserved. It wasn't crumbling, it was being systematically dismantled, brick by corrupt brick, by the weight of its own avarice, finally exposed to the light. 6 months later, the sterile scent of hospitals had been replaced by the historic, slightly musty smell of the Capitol building. My hair, once thin and patchy, had started to grow back, a soft, dark halo. The gauntness in my cheeks was filling out, and the tremor in my hands was gone. I was in remission, a word that still felt like a fragile miracle, a testament to the efficacy of the affordable, accessible CTX 802 that was now, finally, beginning to reach those who needed it. I stood before the House Subcommittee on Health and Oversight, not as a victim, but as a survivor, a scientist, and a witness. The Klieg lights were hot, the microphones intimidating, but my voice was strong. Chairwoman, distinguished members of the committee, I began, my prepared statement resting unread before me, my words coming straight from the heart. My story, as you now know, is not unique in its core tragedy of delayed or denied care, only perhaps in its rather public and dramatic denouement. For far too long, the relentless pursuit of profit, disguised as innovation, has been allowed to dictate the ultimate value of a human life. We have created a system where patent evergreening, price gouging, and the deliberate suppression of more affordable, equally effective treatments are not aberrations, but accepted business practices. A hush fell over the chamber. Marcus Webb and Victoria Kane will face justice for their specific crimes, but the system that bred them, that rewarded their rapacious greed, remains. Unless we change it. A senior congressman leaned into his microphone. Dr. Chen, your courage and your intellect have already brought about seismic shifts. This new legislation before us, informally dubbed Sarah's Law by many of my colleagues and the public, aims to address these systemic failures. It proposes stricter controls on patent extensions for minor drug modifications, transparent pricing models, and robust government authority to negotiate drug prices and, where necessary, compel licensing for essential medicines if an originator company engages in egregious price gouging or suppression of more affordable alternatives. What, in your expert opinion, doctor, would be the tangible impact of such a law? I met his gaze directly. It would mean, Congressman, that no patient would ever again be forced to choose between their life and financial ruin simply because a corporation deems their survival insufficiently profitable. It would mean that brilliant research, often publicly funded in its early stages, serves humanity first, not shareholder dividends. My voice caught for a moment. It would mean that the next Dr. Sarah Chen doesn't have to nearly die to see her work save lives. It would mean that CTX 802, my research, which is now, thanks to emergency measures and philanthropic efforts, saving thousands of lives every single month, distributed globally at cost, becomes the norm, not the exception. The committee room erupted in sustained applause, a sound that resonated far beyond those hallowed walls. 2 weeks later, Sarah's Law passed both houses of Congress with near-unanimous support. A victory, a profound systemic victory. They asked me, in those early days after the Gala, after Webb's arrest, if I wanted revenge. Seeing his empire in ashes, his name a byword for corporate malfeasance, his face stripped of its arrogance and power during his televised perp walk, there was a certain grim satisfaction, yes. A sense that the universe had, however belatedly, rebalanced its scales. But revenge is a hollow pursuit, an echo in an empty chamber. It consumes, but it does not create. This, I thought months later, reading a letter from a clinic in rural India, a letter filled with stories of lives reclaimed from the brink by CTX 802, tears streaming down my face. This is different. This is creation, not destruction. This is hope, not retribution. This is life, blossoming in the wasteland their greed tried to create. The fight had taken nearly everything from me, but it had given me something far greater in return, a purpose that extended beyond my own survival. a legacy written not in academic papers, but in the grateful eyes of strangers, in the renewed laughter of families, in the quiet, steady beat of hearts that would otherwise have fallen silent. Marcus Webb wanted an empire. I just wanted to save lives. And in the end, justice, true justice, tasted infinitely sweeter, infinitely more nourishing than revenge ever could.